My uncle gave me a choice: marry a man they called a savage, or watch 100 children die. That was my welcome to the Montana Territory, 1876. I'd come from Boston, a world of cobblestones and gaslights, to find a new beginning after my father's death. I found the end of the world instead. My uncle, Edward, was a doctor here, a good man, trying to hold back a tide of sickness with nothing but a black bag and a prayer. The smallpox was back. It was tearing through the Blackfeet tribe, and they didn't trust white medicine. They had their own healers, their own ways, but their ways weren't working. Not this time. "They'll only let me help," my uncle said, his fork frozen over his plate, "if we are bound by family." I stared at him. The flickering lamplight made his face look like a skull. "Their chief Gray Wolf has a son," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "A warrior. They call him Black Thunder." The name landed on the table like a stone. I'd heard whispers of him at the fort, a ghost who moved in the tall grass, a man who took scalps and left widows. "He's lost 2 wives to the sickness already," my uncle said. "They believe he's cursed." The implication was a cold hand on my neck. "You can't mean it." My voice was a stranger's, thin and brittle. "Sarah," he pleaded, finally looking at me. "I've tried everything. This is their custom. A marriage to form an alliance. It's the only way they'll let me in. It's the only way to get the medicine to the children." I shot up from my chair, the wood scraping against the floor. "You'd sacrifice me? To them? To save them?" His voice was rough with desperation. "They're just people, Sarah. Mothers and fathers watching their babies burn with fever." "He's a killer," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "You want me to be the wife of a man like that?" My uncle's face hardened. 3 days. That's all I ask. Come with me. See the children. See their faces. After 3 days, if you still say no, I'll find another way. But I'm telling you, Sarah, there is no other way." I wanted to run, to scream. But where would I go? Back east, across 1,000 miles of unforgiving land with winter breathing down my neck. My money was gone. My old life was gone. I was trapped. The next morning, he took me to a quarantine camp just outside the fort. It was a place of quiet misery. The air was thick with the smell of herbal smoke and death. I saw the children he spoke of, small bodies covered in sores, their breath coming in shallow rasps. Their mothers sat beside them, humming low, mournful songs, their eyes hollowed out by grief. My Boston sensibilities, my fine education, it all meant nothing here. This was real. This was a horror I couldn't have imagined. I spent 2 days helping my uncle, my hands raw from mixing poultices, my heart cracking with every weak cry. I learned to change dressings, to cool fevers, to offer what little comfort I could. On the 3rd day, a shadow fell over the entrance of the lodge where I was tending to a little boy. The women inside went silent, their heads bowed. I looked up and saw a silhouette that blocked the sun. He stepped inside, and the air went cold. It was him. Black Thunder. He was taller than I imagined, a mountain of a man wrapped in a buffalo robe. His hair was long and black, with a single eagle feather tied into it. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, his eyes like chips of obsidian. They found me instantly, and I felt like a bug pinned to a board. He wasn't just looking at me. He was assessing me, weighing me, and I could feel myself being found wanting. But then he did something I didn't expect. He knelt by the sick boy. The gentleness in his large hands was a shocking contrast to the lethal presence he projected. He spoke to the child in his own language, his voice a low, soft rumble. The boy, who hadn't smiled in days, managed a weak grin. For a fleeting moment, the fearsome warrior was gone, replaced by something else, something human. He rose and turned his gaze back to me. "You are the healer's niece," he said. His English was perfect, formal. "Yes," I managed to say, my throat tight. "You have gentle hands," he observed, A simple statement of fact. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway, his back still to me. Your uncle says you will decide today. I do not seek a wife. I seek to stop the crying of the mothers. If you say no, I will not blame you. And then he was gone. He left me standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs, more confused and terrified than ever. He wasn't the monster I'd pictured. He was worse. He was a man who had just placed the lives of his people squarely in my hands. That night, I gave my uncle my answer. I'll do it. His shoulders sagged with relief, but I held up a hand. But I have conditions. My uncle's eyes widened. Conditions? Sarah, this is a delicate negotiation. I'm aware, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This man, Black Thunder, the soldiers at the fort say he is violent. They say he leads raids. They are rumors, Sarah. Are they? I cut him off. I will not be a pawn in a war. My condition is this. Black Thunder must make a vow. Not to me, but in front of his people and mine. He must vow that for the year of our agreement, none of his warriors will raise a weapon against any settler or soldier, unless they are fired upon first. He must choose peace. My uncle stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. You're asking a warrior to lay down his arms. I'm asking a leader to save his people, I countered. If this marriage is about medicine, then let the first dose be peace. If he refuses, there is no deal. The wedding, if you could call it that, was 3 days later at sunrise. A cold, gray affair that felt more like a treaty signing than a union. I stood shivering in a deerskin dress the women had given me. It was beautiful, heavy with beads, but it felt like a costume. My face was painted with symbols I didn't understand. I felt like a doll being dressed for a grim play. Black Thunder stood opposite me, his face unreadable, a stone carving in the dawn light. When my uncle presented my condition, a murmur went through the assembled warriors. Grey Wolf, the chief, looked at his son. I held my breath, certain he would refuse, certain this would all be over. Black Thunder's dark eyes met mine. There was a flicker of something in them. Annoyance, respect, I couldn't tell. He then looked out at his people, at the faces of the sick and the grieving. He spoke in his language, his voice strong and clear. My uncle translated in a low whisper. He accepts, Edward breathed, his voice tight with disbelief. He says a warrior's greatest strength is knowing when not to fight. We exchanged tokens. I gave him a silver locket with a portrait of my mother. He gave me a pendant of carved bone. It was my grandmother's, he said, his voice low. Those were the only words he spoke to me. As the final ritual was completed, a profound sense of dread washed over me. I had not just married a stranger. I had chained myself to a mystery, a man of violence who had just promised peace. And I had no idea if he could be trusted. The Blackfeet camp was a sprawling city of hide and smoke, nestled in a river valley. As we rode in, I was the spectacle. Children pointed. Women whispered behind their hands. I felt like an exotic bird in a cage, their curious eyes following my every move. Black Thunder led me to a large teepee near the center of the camp. This is your home, he said, holding the flap open for me. It was a simple, stark statement. Inside, it was spacious and clean. Buffalo robes lined the floor, and a small fire burned in the center. He pointed to a space where my trunks had been placed. My sister, Morning Star, will come. I have to hunt. And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the sudden, deafening silence. The reality hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto a pile of furs, the smell of wood smoke and leather filling my lungs, and wondered what on earth I had done. A short while later, a young woman entered with a shy smile. She had the same high cheekbones and dark eyes as her brother, but hers were filled with warmth and light. This was Morning Star. You are brave to come, she said in the same careful English as her brother. The women have been talking. What are they saying? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She sat across from me, her movements graceful. Some say you are a spirit woman sent to heal us. Others, others say my brother took you as a prize of war. Her eyes searched mine. They whisper about his other wives. A chill went down my spine. What about them? Morning Star hesitated, chewing on her lip. My brother is a good man, but he carries much sadness. His first wife, Snow Lily, died giving birth to their son. The baby followed 2 days later. The story was tragic, but it was what she said next that truly frightened me. His second wife, Dawn Bird, she was like you. Like me. A white woman, Morning Star clarified. The daughter of a missionary. She came to teach our children. My brother. He loved her very much. But she died last winter. The fever, they said. It was very sudden. Morning Star leaned closer, her voice dropping. Some of the elders whisper that it wasn't the fever. They say she was unhappy here, that she tried to leave him, and that he is cursed, that death follows him. The air in the teepee suddenly felt thin, hard to breathe. I had married a man not just rumored to be a killer of his enemies, but whispered to be the cause of his own wife's death. A white woman, just like me. I spent the afternoon in a daze, Morning Star's words echoing in my head. She helped me unpack, showing me where to store my things. In one of my trunks, tucked away in a corner, was my father's medical bag. I opened it, the familiar smell of carbolic acid and dried herbs a small comfort. Inside, beside the neat rows of vials and bandages, was his journal. He had filled it with notes, observations, drawings of plants. I ran my fingers over his precise handwriting, a fresh wave of grief washing over me. Later, I found a small leather pouch tucked into the teepee's liner. It was clearly not mine. Curious, I opened it. Inside was a small, crudely carved wooden bird and a faded blue ribbon. It felt personal, private. I knew instantly it must have belonged to Dawn Bird. The bird was simple, but the ribbon, it was from Boston. I recognized the silk maker's mark. A piece of my old world, here in this wild place. Holding it, I felt a ghostly connection to the woman who had come before me. A woman who had also tried to bridge these two worlds. And failed. When Black Thunder returned at dusk, 2 deer slung over his horse, I was sitting outside, writing in my own journal, the pouch with the ribbon tucked in my pocket. He gave me a brief nod, all business, and took the deer to be prepared. When he came back to the fire, he sat across from me, sharpening his knife. The rhythmic scrape of steel on stone grating on my nerves. The women have questions, I said, trying to keep my voice even. They are curious, he replied, not looking up. They have not seen a white woman who was not a missionary or a captive. The words hung in the air. And which am I? I challenged. His eyes, dark and intense, finally met mine. You are Black Thunder's wife. That is all they need to know. The words were meant to be a definition, a shield. But they sounded like a sentence, a cage. And what does that mean? I pressed, my fear making me bold. What is expected of me? He seemed to consider this. The women do the work of the camp. But you are here for medicine. That will be your purpose. And us? I asked, the question I dreaded most. As husband and wife? His expression was a mask. I gave your uncle my word. I will respect your ways. You will have your own sleeping robes. He gestured to a separate pile of furs on the far side of the teepee. No one will harm you here. You are under my protection. Relief washed over me, so strong my knees felt weak. But it was followed by a strange, unsettling confusion. A tiny part of me, a part I refused to acknowledge, was disappointed. I told myself it was madness, a symptom of the sheer terror of my situation. But the feeling lingered. The days fell into a strange rhythm. I worked with my uncle, learning the Blackfeet names for healing plants, combining his science with their ancient knowledge. I spent my afternoons with the sick, my hands always busy, my mind always working. It was a relief to have a purpose, to feel useful. It kept the fear at bay. Black Thunder remained a ghost in my new life. He would be gone before I woke, and often returned long after I had retreated to my lonely pile of furs. But I felt his eyes on me. When he was in the camp, I would look up from my work and find him watching, his expression unreadable. He never came near my sleeping area. He never spoke a word that wasn't necessary. He was a stone wall I couldn't find a crack in. One night, after a long day where we lost a small girl to the fever, I returned to the teepee exhausted and heartsick. It was empty. Grateful for the solitude, I washed the grime and grief of the day from my skin, standing by the fire in my thin chemise. The flap of the teepee opened without a sound. He was just there. I gasped, clutching a damp cloth to my chest. "You work too hard," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. "I didn't hear you." My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. "The grandmother of the boy you helped," he said, setting down his bow. "She says your spirit is strong. His fever broke this evening." "It's not spirits," I said, my voice shaky. "It's science. Knowledge." He moved to the fire, the light playing over the hard planes of his face. "Knowledge is a weapon. My people know how to read the land, how to survive the winter. Your people know how to read books." "We can share that knowledge," I said, finding my courage. "That's why I'm here. To build a bridge." For the first time since I'd met him, I saw the stone of his expression soften, just for a second. "Yes," he said, his voice low. "That is why you are here." But as he looked at me, standing half-dressed in the firelight, I saw something else in his eyes. A flicker of heat, of hunger, that was gone as quickly as it appeared. It was terrifying, and it was thrilling. Later that night, I was jolted from a restless sleep by shouts from the camp. I grabbed a blanket and hurried outside. Torches cut through the darkness, illuminating a chaotic scene. A group of riders had returned, and they were carrying a wounded man. Blood soaked his buckskins. "Soldiers!" Morningstar hissed, appearing at my side. "They ambushed our hunters at the creek." Black Thunder was already there, his face a mask of cold fury. He spoke in rapid, angry tones to the other warriors. Then he saw me. He strode over, his presence a physical force. "Your people shoot without cause," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "2 dead, 3 wounded." "Let me help," I pleaded, starting toward the injured man. He blocked my path, his body an immovable wall. "My men will not be touched by white hands. They believe your medicine is a trick, a poison." "That's insane. I can stop the bleeding," I protested. He stared down at me, his eyes burning with a rage that had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with 100 years of broken promises and violence. I thought he would refuse, but after a long, tense moment, he gave a sharp nod. "Come. But if they refuse you, you will step away." I worked through the night beside the tribe's medicine woman, a wrinkled old woman with wise, tired eyes. We cleaned wounds, applied poultices, and bound injuries. One warrior spat at the sight of me, but the others, seeing the desperation in their friend's eyes, allowed my help. As dawn painted the sky in shades of gray and pink, I stumbled back to my teepee, my body aching. Black Thunder was waiting. His face was grim. "The youngest one, Running Fox," he said without preamble. "The bullet is deep. He burns with fever. Our medicine is not enough." He looked at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. The warrior at war with the leader. "Your uncle. He must come." "The fort is hours away," I said, already grabbing my medical bag. "He'll die before we get there and back. We have to take him to the fort." "Take a warrior into the lion's den? They will hang him before your uncle can even see him." "Then I'll go with you," I said, my mind made up. "I'm your wife. A white woman. They won't dare harm him if I'm there." He looked at me, a long, searching look. "You would do this? For one of my men?" "He's just a boy," I said. "And he's dying." Something in my resolve seemed to break through his armor. He gave another one of his sharp, decisive nods. "Be ready to ride in 10 minutes." The journey to Fort Benton was a nightmare of tension. Black Thunder rode ahead, a silent, imposing scout, while I rode beside the travois carrying Running Fox. The boy's breathing was a shallow, ragged sound that set my teeth on edge. His skin was on fire. Twice we had to stop to change his blood-soaked bandages. Both times Black Thunder stood guard, his eyes scanning the horizon, his hand never far from his knife. When I struggled to lift the boy's head to give him water, he was suddenly there, kneeling beside me, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he supported his kinsman. "He is my cousin's son," he said, his first words in over an hour. 16 summers old. He looked at the boy's face, and for a moment, I saw a flash of profound sadness in his eyes. "The Bluecoats, they say we crossed a line that isn't there. They fired. Running Fox was just a boy on a hunt, not a threat." His jaw tightened. "Your uncle is a good man. I know not all whites are the same, but too many see us as animals." "Many of my people," I replied softly, "would say the same about you." Our eyes met, and in that moment, a fragile, unspoken understanding passed between us. Maybe we weren't so different after all. Both of us were trapped in a world that wanted to define us, to put us in boxes. The reception at the fort was even worse than I'd feared. People stared. Women grabbed their children and pulled them inside. Men put their hands on their holstered guns. Black Thunder rode through it all with his head held high, his pride a shield against their hate. But I saw the way his muscles bunched in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. As I dismounted, a man strode toward us. His uniform was immaculate, his face clean-shaven, and horribly familiar. "Miss Calloway," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. He pointedly ignored Black Thunder. "Are you all right? Has this savage harmed you?" My blood ran cold. It was Lieutenant Thomas Davis, my former fiancé from Boston, the man I had left behind because his ambition was a cold, cruel thing. The man whose experiments on the poor had turned my stomach. What was he doing here? "I am fine, Lieutenant," I said, my voice like ice. "And he has a name. This is my husband, Black Thunder. We need a doctor. Now." The word husband hit him like a slap. His face went from pale to crimson. Shock, then fury, then a dark, possessive rage contorted his features. He stared from me to the powerful warrior standing beside me, and his hand tightened on the hilt of his pistol. "Husband," he spat, the word an insult. "So the filthy rumors are true. You threw yourself away on him." Black Thunder stepped forward, placing himself between me and Davis. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His presence was a clear and present danger. "My wife brought a sick boy," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We are here for medicine, not for talk." The air crackled with tension. I could see the soldiers behind Davis shifting, their hands moving toward their rifles. This was about to explode. I quickly put a hand on Black Thunder's arm, feeling the rigid muscle beneath his sleeve. "Thomas, please," I said, using his first name to remind him of who we were, of the life I had rejected. "A boy is dying. Whatever you think of me, don't let him die because of your pride." My uncle rushed out of his clinic then, breaking the standoff. He took one look at Running Fox and started shouting for orderlies. The immediate medical crisis overshadowed the personal one, but as they carried Running Fox inside, Davis gave me a look of pure hatred, a look that promised this was far from over. Inside, my uncle worked feverishly, with me at his side. The bullet was lodged deep in the boy's shoulder, dangerously close to an artery. Black Thunder stood in the corner of the room, a silent, watchful sentinel. He never took his eyes off us. His face was impassive, but I could feel his anxiety, his mistrust of this place, of these people. After what seemed like an eternity, my uncle managed to extract the bullet. "He was lucky," Edward said, wiping sweat from his brow. "He'll live." Later, while Running Fox slept, Black Thunder and I stepped outside. The fort was quiet now, but I could still feel eyes on us from the shadows of the barracks. "Your uncle says the boy cannot be moved until morning," Black Thunder said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I nodded, suddenly bone-weary. "We can stay in my old room at my uncle's house." "I will sleep with the horses," he said flatly. "Don't be ridiculous," I snapped. my exhaustion making me reckless. It's freezing, and Davis is looking for any excuse to cause trouble. You'll stay inside. To my surprise, after a moment's hesitation, he agreed. That night was the strangest of my life. We were in the small, civilized room where I had first heard his name, a world away from his teepee. He insisted on laying his robes by the door, a guard dog protecting a woman who was still, in many ways, his prisoner. I lay in the narrow bed, listening to the sound of his breathing in the darkness. It was a steady, powerful rhythm. "Thank you," I whispered into the dark, not sure if he was asleep. "For trusting me, for trusting my uncle." There was a long silence. I thought he hadn't heard me. Then, his voice came deep and soft. "When I was a boy, a soldier shot me." I turned toward the sound, trying to see him in the gloom. I was 10, hunting with my father. The bullet broke my leg. The medicine man said the leg must come off, but a white doctor at a mission, he saved it. He paused. "I still walk. I still ride. I know good medicine when I see it. It has no color." "Is that why you agreed to this?" I asked. "To this marriage?" "My father, Grey Wolf, made the choice," he said. "But I did not fight him. Our children were dying. A man's pride cannot fill a child's grave." The next morning, my uncle insisted Running Fox needed another day to recover. It gave us an unwanted day trapped at the fort. We went to the trading post for supplies, and I watched in fury as the shopkeeper doubled his prices the moment he saw Black Thunder. "This is robbery," I said, my voice ringing through the small store. "These blankets were half this price last month." The shopkeeper, a greasy man with shifty eyes, just shrugged. "Supply and demand, ma'am." "You mean supply and prejudice," I shot back. "We'll take our business elsewhere." I grabbed Black Thunder's arm and pulled him out of the store. "There is no elsewhere," he said quietly once we were outside. "He knows that." "Then we'll send for supplies from Helena," I declared, my mind racing. "My uncle has friends there. We will not be cheated." He looked down at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something that might have been a smile. "You have the spirit of a warrior, Sarah Calloway." "It's Palmer now, I suppose," I said, the name still feeling strange on my tongue. "Or whatever my name is among your people." "Among my people you are wife of Black Thunder," he said. The hint of a smile was definitely there now. "That sounds terribly possessive." "And I am husband of Sarah," he countered. "It is the same." As we walked back, I felt the hostile stares again. "How do you stand it?" I asked. "The way they look at you?" "I see only what is real," he said. "My family, my land, the sky. The rest is just smoke." That evening he surprised me. He saw the book of Shakespeare I carried everywhere and asked about it. "Read to me," he said, settling onto his blankets by the door. So I did. I read him passages from The Tempest, my voice filling the small, quiet room. When I finished, he was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Your words are like paintings," he said. "Our elders tell stories that paint pictures in the mind." "Tell me one," I urged. And in the darkness of that small room, his deep voice wove the story of his people's creation, of old man and the animals, of the mountains and the rivers. I listened, completely captivated, not just by the story, but by the passion in his voice. This stoic, silent warrior was also a poet, a keeper of ancient tales. We were preparing to leave the next morning when Lieutenant Davis appeared, a grim-faced squad of soldiers behind him. "There's been an incident," he announced, his eyes fixed on Black Thunder. "A settler's cabin was raided. A family of 4, murdered. We found tracks. Blackfeet tracks." Black Thunder went rigid. "That is a lie," I said immediately. "His people are camped miles to the west." "Nevertheless," Davis said, a cruel smirk on his lips, "the commander has ordered all Indians detained." He looked directly at Black Thunder. "You're under arrest." The soldiers raised their rifles. Without thinking, I moved, placing myself directly between their guns and my husband. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely breathe. "You will not touch him," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "He was here, with me, all night. My uncle will confirm it." Step aside, Sarah, Davis ordered, his voice cold. This is army business. It doesn't concern you. I lifted my chin. He is my husband, I said, the words feeling truer and more powerful than they ever had before. It absolutely concerns me. Suddenly, there was another voice, sharp and authoritative. What in God's name is going on here, Lieutenant? A captain was striding toward us, his face a thundercloud. He was older than Davis, with kind eyes but a no-nonsense air. Captain Bennett. I'd seen him at the fort before, a man known for being fair. Davis stammered. Sir, there was a raid. And you decided to arrest the one man in the territory who has been actively working with us for peace, Bennett snapped. He looked from Davis's furious face to mine, standing defiantly in front of Black Thunder. He seemed to take in the whole situation in a glance. He turned to Black Thunder. My apologies for my lieutenant's enthusiasm. You and your wife are free to go. I will investigate this raid myself. Properly. We rode away from Fort Benton under a cloud of suspicion. The air was thick with unspoken words. You should not have done that, Black Thunder finally said when the fort was a speck behind us. Stood in front of their guns. And I should have let that jealous fool arrest you for a crime you didn't commit? I shot back. I can take care of myself, he said grimly. He wasn't just a soldier, I said quietly. His name is Thomas Davis. We were to be married back in Boston. Black Thunder turned in his saddle to look at me, his face unreadable. He said nothing, but a new understanding, and a new tension passed between us. He now knew the danger wasn't just prejudice. It was personal. That night we made camp halfway back to his village. As I tended to Running Fox, Black Thunder went to hunt. He returned with a rabbit, which he skinned with an efficiency that was both fascinating and brutal. As we cooked it over the fire, he spoke. Captain Bennett, he said. He asked about you. What did he say? He said he knew your uncle. He said you came west because you broke an engagement to a doctor in Boston. He paused, his eyes on me. A doctor who hurt people to help his research. I was stunned that Bennett knew my story. It's true, I admitted. Thomas, Lieutenant Davis, he believed the ends justified any means. I didn't. You believe all life is worthy of care? He asked. Even your enemies? I don't see your people as enemies, I said. But you feared me, he stated, not unkindly. The man who takes scalps. I couldn't lie. Yes, I whispered. That's what I was told. He poked the fire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks into the night. I have fought, he said, his voice low. I have killed warriors who came to harm my people. But I have never harmed a woman, or a child, or a man who could not fight back. That is not our way. He looked at me, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. Now you know the truth. That night, it was colder than before. Without discussion, we shared our blankets for warmth. I lay beside him, my back pressed against his, acutely aware of his size, his strength, the steady beat of his heart. I felt safe. Protected. I looked up at the sky, a brilliant spray of stars against black velvet. There's so much brighter here, I murmured. The stars are the same, he said gently. Your eyes are just beginning to see. He pointed, tracing the constellations with his finger, telling me their Blackfeet names, their stories. And as he spoke, I felt the last of my Boston world fall away. I was here, in this wild, dangerous, beautiful place, with this wild, dangerous, beautiful man. When we arrived at the camp, it was in an uproar. Captain Bennett had already been there, with a patrol. He had been polite, respectful, but his questions had put everyone on edge. He was investigating the raid, he'd said. He wanted to find the real killers. That night, the council fire burned late. The young warriors were angry. They wanted revenge for the constant accusations, the constant pressure from the soldiers. Grey Wolf urged caution. Then, Black Thunder stood to speak. The firelight danced on his stern face. The blue coats want a war, he said, his voice carrying over the crackling flames. They invent reasons, they create raids, so they can take our land. If we fight, we give them the excuse they need. So we do nothing? A young warrior shouted. I did not say do nothing, Black Thunder answered, his voice calm but powerful. I said we must be smarter than they are. We have an ally. Captain Bennett, he seeks the truth. My wife, a white woman, stood against their guns for me. Not all of them are our enemies. He looked over the fire, and his eyes found mine. We will help this captain. We will give him the proof he needs to find the liars. We will fight with truth, not arrows. It is a slower poison, but it is just as deadly. The council agreed. Over the next weeks, a strange alliance was formed. Black Thunder would meet secretly with Bennett, sharing his scouts' knowledge of the territory. In return, Bennett promised to keep Davis and his soldiers away from the camp. A fragile peace settled. And in that peace, something between me and Black Thunder began to grow. He started taking me with him to gather herbs, teaching me the secrets of the prairie. He showed me which plants could heal, and which could kill. In the evenings, he carved a flute, and the haunting melodies he played filled our teepee. Speaking of a sorrow and a beauty I was only just beginning to understand. The invisible wall between our sleeping robes was still there, but it was thinner now. Sometimes our hands would brush, and a jolt of electricity would pass between us. I was falling in love with my husband. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. One night, the wind howled like a hungry wolf, and I woke to see him staring into the fire, his face etched with a familiar pain. Tell me, I whispered, moving closer to the warmth. He was silent for a long time. Then he spoke of his first wife, Snow Lily, and the son he held for only 2 days. The grief in his voice was a raw, open wound. Then Dawnbird, he said, his voice thick. The fever took her so fast. She was not happy here. She missed her world, her people. He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible vulnerability. The elders say I am cursed, that I bring death to those I love. That's just superstition, I said fiercely. It's not a curse, it's a disease. When my father told me I must marry you, he confessed, I refused. I would not be the cause of another woman's death. And yet, I said softly, my heart aching for him, here I am, and I am very much alive. His gaze held mine, 1,000 unspoken emotions passing between us. Yes, he whispered. Here you are. 3 days later, the world turned white. A blizzard descended, burying the camp in a deep, silent blanket of snow. Hunting was impossible. The food ran low. A quiet desperation settled over the people. Against my pleading, against his father's counsel, Black Thunder gathered 3 warriors and went out into the storm. The people must eat, was all he said. They were gone for 2 days. I paced the teepee like a caged animal, my fear a cold knot in my stomach. On the evening of the 2nd day, a shout went up. They were back. I ran out into the blinding snow. They had 2 elk, a bounty that would save the village. But Black Thunder was slumped over his horse, his leg covered in frozen blood. An elk had gored him. I pushed my way through the crowd, my medical training taking over. I got him inside, cut away his leggings, and saw the wound. It was deep and ragged. He was losing a lot of blood. As I worked, cleaning and stitching the torn flesh, he watched my face. His own was pale and tight with pain. You were worried, he murmured. Of course I was worried, you idiot, I snapped, my hands shaking as I pulled a stitch tight. You could have died out there. The people have meat, he said, as if it were the only thing that mattered. There are other hunters, I cried, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. I don't need you to be a hero. I need you to be alive. His hand, warm despite the cold that clung to him, covered mine. He stopped my frantic work. You care for me, Sarah? He asked, his voice full of a raw, hopeful wonder. The question broke me. I looked at this impossible man, this warrior, this poet, this stranger who had become the center of my world. Yes, I whispered, the confession a release. I care for you more than I can say. That night, There was no space between our sleeping robes. He reached for me, and I went into his arms, into his embrace, without hesitation. In the heart of the blizzard, surrounded by the howling wind, we found a quiet, warm place that belonged only to us. We were no longer two people from different worlds. We were just a man and a woman, finally home. The blizzard broke, and with the returning sun came Captain Bennett. He rode into camp not with accusations, but with answers. He had found the men who'd murdered the settlers. They weren't Blackfeet. They weren't even Crow. They were white men, hired by a land speculator from the east who wanted to start an Indian war to clear the territory for a railroad. Bennett had arrested them all. The truth had come out. The peace Black Thunder had fought for with patience instead of arrows had been won. "Your husband is a wise man," Bennett told me as he prepared to leave. "Wiser than most I know, of any color." He handed me a packet of letters from Boston. "Your mother wants to come for a visit," he said with a grin. "Seems she's curious about her new son-in-law." The thought of my prim and proper mother meeting Black Thunder was almost comical. But as I watched him across the camp, teaching a group of boys how to fletch arrows, the image didn't seem so strange anymore. That evening, we walked by the river, the air crisp and clean. "My mother wants to visit," I told him. "She will be welcome," he said simply. "Family is important." I stopped walking and took his hand. "I was thinking," I said, my heart beating a little faster. "We could build a cabin. Here, by the river, made of logs, with a stone fireplace. Big enough for visitors." He turned to face me, his dark eyes searching mine. "The year of our agreement will end soon," he said quietly. "You are thinking of staying?" The idea of leaving, of returning to Boston, felt like a death sentence. That life wasn't mine anymore. My life was here, on this wild land, with this incredible man. "I am not staying because of an agreement," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I am staying because this is my home now. You are my home." A slow smile spread across his face, a beautiful, genuine smile that transformed his stern features and made my heart soar. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight against his chest. "Then, we will build a home," he murmured into my hair. "A home not in your world, or in mine, but one we make together, between the two." As the sun went down, painting the mountains in hues of gold and purple, I knew my journey west hadn't been an end, but a beginning. I had come seeking a new life and found a love I never could have dreamed of, a love strong enough to bridge any divide, a love that had healed not just a people, but my own soul. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the edge of the map. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you for being here.